Hey people, so I got a message. I'm going to actually post the entire um, thing minus names and stuff in the section below, so you can understand where this is coming from. I'm not even really going to dig into the question. I'm just going to kind of go straight into mm, my response to this in general. Um, this individual, I'm going to be sending a message and trying to see if I can talk to them individually. But for those who have watched my videos for any length of time, um, I've talked about the fact that in various, in a couple relationships, two particularly, that domestic violence to one degree or another um, was part of the relationship. Um, Pretty much 99% of the time not coming from my end, especially with one of the relationships. It was pretty much all coming from her end, and I was caught in this trap of trying to make it better, and it didn't. And then another time had a relationship that was very toxic, and I would just doing things in that relationship that I just have never done before, and I will never put myself in that position and again. But the question was really about how do you transfer out of that, having lived through that that situation of domestic violence um, perpetrated against you, and then you going on to being dominant and doing things that are that in that line of, if it was any other situation it would be considered abuse, but inside of us it's considered play, and the how to deal with that on an emotional level, specifically play types like uh, humiliation play. um, you know um, I I've said before and I'll say again, one of my favorite play types is interrogation play, and the it's the one of the only few types of things that I'll ever do where I don't use safe words. And I mean, there are a few types. The two specific that I have just cited, um, humiliation play and not just general, not just my little bit of humiliation, not just a little bit of torture, interrogation, but full on heavy scenes of how to reconcile the emotional aspects of living in this lifestyle, doing those play types, but having those experiences. I know a lot of people will say, well, you're not really qualified because you're a man and you don't know what it's like for a woman to be blah, blah, blah. I've honestly, I've heard that before, and I honestly just want to smack those people. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, whether you're straight, gay, trans, whatever. You, we all can suffer from being in a relationship with somebody who is verbally, emotionally, or physically abusive to us, and we get to a point with inside it where we start blaming ourselves and start, especially if you're coming from where, from the dominant point of view, where you're supposed to be in control, you're supposed to be in charge, you're supposed to be the person who is making the decisions and making the choices, and somehow these things start happening and you start blaming yourself, which is typical in in an abusive relationship, where even in a non BDSM relationship, the person who is usually the person who is the abused is the person who blames themselves and thinks they are the ones that are causing it, and they are the ones that they are the ones in the wrong, and it's not the other person, that they did something to deserve it, or they did something to make the other person do this. Oh, I made him angry, so he hit me. Oh, I didn't do this, so he did this to me, or I did, or whatever, and it's all BS and bullshit. But the reality is, when you're in this and doing this, coming out of that, and then trying to reconcile the emotions of doing the verbal, the emotional, the physical things that happen to you in real life, because at the hands of another individual, and doing it to another individual inside of a play scene. The thing is that getting to that point where, for me, the way I kind of dealt with it is I didn't. I honestly didn't, because I just came to the realization that what happened to me inside that situation was not my fault. I did not do anything to deserve what happened. I did not, I did not ask for it. I did not want it. It was, um, it was an emotional trap that I got caught up in. But then to go and do those things to another individual, I could see where the emotions are, you're you're trying to work through the emotions to try to be able to let yourself go to play and do these things. The thing is that you have to keep one thing in mind when you're doing it. I don't care what kind of, any kind of play scene that we do, coming from having been in an abusive relationship. The person you're doing it with is consenting. You've talked. You've established rules. You've established guidelines. You've worked through all of the what ifs, and even if you're not playing with the safe word, at least be smart enough to know that you can go overboard because of the emotional issues in your life, and have a third person there guiding it and being the person who can stop you and stop the scene. Not necessarily a DM, because DMs, if you're going at a club and a DM, um, uh, for those who don't know, DM is Dungeon Monitor. Um, Basically, their job is to make sure scenes don't go off track, and it gets abusive. But the thing is that they don't really have the time to sit and watch your half-hour, 45-minute scene to make sure you're not going off the rails. Yes, people work with RAC, risk-aware consensual kink. I'm not a massive fan of RAC. I think it puts people in situations that they may not necessarily be prepared for. I definitely am a fan of safe, sane, and consensual. I'm a fan of safe words. But in a scene like this, where everybody has had very long conversations about what is going to happen, about where is that, you can once you've established the rules and you have all of your safety precautions in place, let go. Just let go. You use it as a cathartic way to get rid of the emotions, not necessarily saying, I'm doing this because he did this to me, or I'm doing this because she did this to me, but do it as a way to help cleanse your emotional self, to get back that thing that you needed, that area of your life that you need to fulfill the emotional side of what you're doing. I know some people sound that's just psychobabble. I've been doing this long enough, and I've seen it where I look at the other side where women who have been raped um, want to have a rape play fantasy scene. Again with again, no safe words, using a rack type system, blah blah blah, and a lot of them use it as a way to gain control of what they've lost. The other person who did this thing to them did it non-consensually. What you're trying to do is what they're trying to do is regain that control by having these same things done in a controlled environment. It's it's odd to say that. It's odd to think that way. But the thing is that we deal with emotions that other places in society just don't touch. We get into deep areas of feelings and emotions and everything else that, regardless of whether it's a simple paddling or a simple bondage or a hardcore, you know, you know, hardcore, um, hardcore humiliation scene, whatever it is, you need to take, you have these emotional things that you need to work through. Use it. Use that time with that person. And if you need to, be honest with them. Tell them that I'm using this as a way to deal with these emotions and get these emotions out and get through these emotions in a way that is safe and healthy. It's a difficult, what we do, no matter what we are, we are asking ourselves to do things that are against our human nature, to do things to other humans that society tells us are bad and wrong and everything else, and we, on the other hand, try to revel in it. But when you're coming in already emotionally scarred because of somebody else doing something that is, wasn't consented to, wasn't talked about, you didn't spend hours saying, hey, by the way, it's cool if you call me these 10 words, but not cool if you call me these 10 words, so you can call me, whore, bitch, and slut, but don't ever call me, cunt. You never had that conversation before that person started doing those things to you. So you can't really blame yourself. They chose to make those decisions, whatever the reason is, whether it's, it's emotional, psychological, whatever the fuck it is, whether bipolar, manic depressive, I mean, the list of things and reasons why are a million, long. Are the alcoholic, whatever, a hardcore drug addict, blah, 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 blah. The reality is, you didn't ask to be abused. You didn't ask for somebody to treat you that way. And now you still have those emotional blocks. Using things like these kinds of plays as a cathartic way to get through those emotions is something that is incredibly difficult. And trust me, I've had many a scene afterwards where I'm supposed to be the strong, dominant, I'm supposed to be the one, and after I took care of them, got their aftercare done and all of their other thing, I went outside, grabbed had a cigar, and spent an hour crying, just trying to avoid people, getting those emotions out and letting those feelings out. And the thing is that as a dominant, just because you're a dominant doesn't mean you don't have emotions. You need to be able to express your emotions, and you need to do it in the right time, in the right place. And right after a scene is not necessarily the best time, because you need to take care of your sub. And I know there are some people who say, well, what about aftercare for the dom? And I'm not going to even deal with that right now. The thing is that you need to be able to look at yourself and be able to get through those emotions. And if you can use your play scenes as a way to break through those emotional barriers and get to the other side, where not only is it is it comfortable to do these things to another human being, but you find joy and happiness in these things, then it's worth the effort. It's worth the emotional, all the emotions that you're going to have to go through, the anger, the laughter, the crying, the everything under the sun could hit you all at once. And this is one reason why, if you're going to do these scenes, especially if you know that you're not necessarily emotionally stable enough to completely handle it, that necessarily I think it's a good idea to have a third person there just to watch, to make sure nothing's bad's going to happen. So, I know. Yeah, I'm 16 and a half minutes into this video, and I've only said about 3 things, but, that's the way I do things. Yeah, I'm, for anybody who has to go through this, it's tough. I'm not going to lie. It's hard. You're going to do things you're going to do things to yourself emotionally that you would never ask your submissives to do. You would never, you have to be able to push yourself to get yourself comfortable with the idea of doing these things. And it's hard. It's fucking hard. I'm not going to lie. It's hard. It's heartbreaking. It hurts. And it's something that you just kind of have to get through. I know that I didn't consciously try to work through the emotions, but I know I did. I didn't try, to go through it. I knew after I got out of the situation and got out of what was going on, the bullshit that was involved in it, and I know that the way that you have to deal with it is going to vary from person to person. How you're going to deal with it is going to be very different than how I'm going to deal with it, how the next person is going to deal with it, how the next person is going to deal with it. So, I know, again, I'm very long-winded, very little to say. It's the way I do my videos. So, if somebody out there thinks I'm wrong, please, tell me. I would really like to have, somebody come across and tell me I'm wrong, and tell me why I'm wrong. Don't just tell me I'm wrong, because that's stupid, but tell me why I'm wrong. But this is a hard, this was, when I got this message, it took me a bit to sit and think, but I had been thinking about, it's one of the things that, this is something that kind of never leaves your brain. You're always on high alert for it. You're always looking out for it. And even though I've worked through most of the emotions, it still hurts thinking about it, about what she did to me. About the fact that, she at one point said very clearly, I could kill you, call the cops, say it was self-defense, and she wouldn't spend a night in jail. That's the kind of situation that I was coming from. So yeah, that's really, it still hurts today, but I've worked through the majority of it, and I can be comfortable with the scenes. I can enjoy it for what it is and not really put too much else on it. But every once in a while, something will happen and I lose it. And I need to make sure that I'm first and foremost taking care of the person that I'm taking care of. So, it's difficult, it's hard, it's emotionally draining, and I really hope that if somebody does come across this and they have the situation, that they are able to work this out, because I hate to see people leave this lifestyle simply because of an emotional block, because of the stupidity of others. So that's it. Be well and safe.